beautiful soul. So, I wanted to share a story with you guys today. I am very keenly aware that a lot of the things that I've gone through in this lifetime play a part in all of the many ways in which I can help other people. I understand as well too from a very mature place. Okay, it's taken quite a bit of um, grasping the truth, accepting the truth to get to this place of understanding that certain things that I went through was solely for um, the ability to be able to help others or prevent somebody else from dealing with or going through something that I went through as well. So, yesterday I put up a status on my Facebook and I'm going to insert it in here, pause to read. And as you can see from this status, I was speaking about roots, okay? People, and in particular, when we talk about, roots can be put on people for many different reasons, but in particular, I was speaking about people being in relationships with people that they shouldn't be in a relationship with, right? People who mistreat them, who do them all types of ways, right? Everything but good, okay? Um, but I can speak about this because I was in a relationship. I was in a marriage um, that stemmed from me having roots put on me, right? Everything that I dealt with. And I've talked about, many times before certain aspects or dynamics of things that I've dealt with in that marriage, right? And please go back to my page, view those videos to get caught up, if you will. Um, but in particular, I can remember, you know, when it came towards the end of everything, or when it came down to the time where I knew I had a decision to make on whether or not I was going to spend the rest of my life being abused by somebody who clearly gave zero ifs about me, my well being, our relationship, you know, all of the above, or would I move on? You know what I'm saying? Do something different. And at the time where I knew that I was being faced with that choice, or I was getting ready to, I had no idea what leaving or saying, no, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I had no idea what that would look like for me. Now, what I realize is a lot of times that feeling of unsurety, that feeling of not knowing where you're going to go, who you can maybe run to next, or what life is going to look like for you, especially if you are dependent in any sort of way upon said person who is mistreating you and disregarding your relationship. I understand what that feeling is, and I understand how holding on to that feeling of unsurety can sometimes cause you to prolong making a decision that you need to make. Now, with that being said, I want to share with you just how strategically God provided me with a way of escape to do what I needed to do when it was my time. Now, at the time when everything went down, and again, I've spoken about some of these things in details before, so if you don't know the story, go back and check that out. But at the time where it came down to it, I've talked about before, to where I prayed and I was like, God, the way I feel right now, I want to be done with everything. I was heavy in religion still at the time when all these things were going on. And just like the trap that religion is, right? It encourages you to stay bound and trapped in other aspects of your life. So instead of, people in these churches, people that you look up to as spiritual mothers and fathers and leaders, right? Encouraging you to always be in a position to where you are treated right, right? Understanding that God has not set up anything for us to be in an abusive relationship each and every day, or be in an aspect to where you're pouring out, but you're not receiving what is for you. Instead of people encouraging, me and others who are like me in that religious mindset at the time, to do what's best for you, right? To truly seek out the joy and happiness of God, and understand that comes through being connected to the right people on this earth, who also, put God in a position to where it's like, hey, I wouldn't wrong you because I love God, right? Instead of encouraging people to follow that path, we were often encouraged to suffer through. Oh, just deal with it, keep praying, things will get better, blah, 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 right? So I was dealing with all of those. I don't even know what you want to call it, false beliefs. Let's call it false beliefs, what it is, right? Trying to live with this delusion that, something was going to change or get better, right? But also battling with this very finite understanding and view that nothing is getting better, right? The person that I'm dealing with is choosing each and every day to be worse, to treat me worse, to, fill in the blank, everything under the sun, right? So I'm back and forth. I'm praying. I'm like, God, I'm struggling with this because this is an internal battle. There are parts of me that are screaming, run away. This is not right. This is not how it's supposed to be. But then there are other parts of me that have been programmed through this religious mindset that are telling me, oh, just hold on. Oh, what will people think? Oh, you've seen other people go through things and they've been married 20, 30, 40 plus years, right? Unhappy, but still together. I'm battling. I'm going back and forth. I'm praying. I'm like, God, you're going to have to give me a sign, because if it is your will, I was in this position to where I definitely wanted to follow what God was telling me to do. So I'm like, if it is your will for me to stay and something will get better, you are going to answer my prayers to fix this. You know, we didn't do counseling per se, but that would have been like next steps, like, okay, can we go bring in somebody else to mediate things? Is there just something that is missing in the understanding? But no, everything at that point had been made clear, from me expressing what I needed to that person expressing back to me, I don't care. I'm gonna do what I want to do. I'm gonna treat you how I want to treat you. So I was like, God, you gonna have to give me a sign. If this is not gonna get better, you gonna have to get me up out of this. So as I've shared with you guys before in the previous story times, God gave me my sign loud and clear, right? I left the house. I was put out of my own house 3 weeks after, praying that prayer to God. And so at that time, the person that I was with had already like told me, like, okay, you don't have to work. I want you to be at home. So I wasn't, working any sort of like 9 to 5 position. Now I still was doing music, working with music. I had voice lessons that I was doing from the house. People would come to my home. I would do the voice lessons for them, private, one-on-one, whatever, right? I would do a gig. I would do a gig here and there, because I was still connected with this band that I was working with. So, here and there I would have something coming in. But in general, I was dependent financially upon the person that I was married to. So that was also playing a part in, why I stayed as long as I did, or the worries, right, that would be piling up in my mind. Like, okay, if you leave, then what's going to happen? I did not have the type of family to where, I would feel safe that if, anything happened in my marriage, oh, I know I can go home. It wasn't giving that at all. I knew for a fact that if I walked away from this in some shape, form, or fashion, I didn't know how long, but I knew that I would be on my own. I knew that. I was aware. Now, I didn't know how I was going to fare on my own, how things would work out, but that was the space in which I had to trust God, or understand that when God was giving me the sign, the urging to say that, okay, no, you're not meant to stay here, right? Even if you don't know what's next, I need you to be solid on the understanding that you're not meant to stay here because I'm going to get you up out of there, right? So when I left, there was a 6 month period between, me leaving that space and the court date and the divorce being actually finalized. So, again, the person that we're talking about here that I'm dealing with, this was a person that really did not care for me, right? Um, there were times where he would care enough, right, to where it would keep me going or keep me holding on, keep me in that loop. And if you're going through this, you understand what I'm saying exactly. You understand, right? It's like when times were good, it was super good, but when it was bad, it was horrible. It was hell, okay? So I knew, enough, there was enough caring, right, to keep me on the hook. But what I didn't realize at the time is like, okay, this person was playing a mental game, right? Going back to the origin of this conversation, the roots, right? The roots that were put on me to keep me in place. I'll play the role enough. I'll show you enough care or whatever, or some sort of need or desire for you to keep you from walking away from me. But I will not give the same energy to treating you the way in which you need to be treated, right? To feel comfortable enough to stay with me. No. I'm only going to do enough to mentally keep you captured and locked in and at my disposal, but I'm not going to use any energy to give you what you deserve, right? So, knowing that I'm dealing with this type of person, right? When I left and everything was going on in between the 6 month period, God also was strategically connecting me to people who would play a part in helping me to get completely free from all of this. Now, as we all know, and hopefully this is a huge reminder to you if you are watching this video, God is very strategic, okay? And the people who played a part, a huge part in finalizing, this divorce, this separation, setting me up for my next phase, right? These were people who were already connected to me before this even came about, right? There was a couple who were pastor and wife, right? And this was a church that I had actually worked for um, during the time that I was married. And so they knew at the time I left in like July, right? I had left in July of that year. This was 2019. And I explained to them, I was like, there's a lot going on at home in my marriage, and it's getting very hard for me to deal with mentally all that I'm dealing with at home and then still be able to come here and handle this leadership and ministry position the way in which I need to. So I had to step away. So they knew enough to know that there was something going on in my marriage, but between July, September, when all of this went down, where I pretty much was put out of my own space. And then when I came into contact with these people again in November, right? They were calling me and reaching out to me to book me for a Christmas gala that they had going on in December. And so, quite naturally, the conversations that I was having um, with them and the pastor's daughter led me to have to explain to them everything that had happened to me, right? So they were now aware of me living in my car, being homeless. And I even talked about in the previous story time, right? How they were pretty much the ones who provided me my first place to stay on my own after all of this was going down, right? Because they opened up a little space on the church campus for me to come and to be there, right? Because they knew I deserved better than what I was being put through at the time, right? So keep that in mind. The other person was a lady who was taking voice lessons from me at the time when all of this was going on. And as I said at the beginning of the video, I was doing this from my home. So imagine having lessons scheduled for a person from one week to the next, right? But in between lessons, you get put out of your own house. So when this person is like, hey, are we still on for this week, blah blah blah, whatever, now you have to explain to them everything that's going on and why you can no longer continue the lessons, or if you do, it'll have to be continued elsewhere, whatever, right? So I then had to explain to her, right, everything that was going on. And even before we got to the conversation of divorce, right, she was just very instrumental in my life. She, would help me out often. She gave me a whole lot of clothes because I lost a lot of my items. She would just take me out to eat randomly, so that I wouldn't just be sitting in my car all day. Um, just again, just the strategy of God to surround me with the right people. Now, fast forward to, months later when we're getting close to the time of like, okay, how are we going to finalize this? Now, my prayer to God during that time was like, okay, God, I know how, this works. Even in the most simple form of divorce, you're still going to have to spend money. You're going to have to spend money to retain, your attorney, to get whatever documents and paperwork that is necessary per your state, the state that you're getting divorced in, all of these things. And again, remember that the person that I'm dealing with is not a good person. So every person that was involved with me at the time or knew that this divorce was coming about, we all understood that I needed to be the one to, hopefully be able to initiate this process, because whatever he was going to try to do in the paperwork, we already knew it was going to be foolish, right? He was a very, very, very evil person. So I was like, I don't have the money for this, but I need you to work something out to where this is a pro bono situation. So initially, my thought process was to just reach out to certain attorneys, explain to them what I had going on, and ask them straight up and down, have you met your pro bono quota for the year? Because a lot of attorneys will say like, okay, I'm going to accept 5 pro bono cases this year, right? I'm going to work for this person free of charge or at my own expense, and usually you will see an attorney do that if they know that it's going to be a case where they can recoup their funds from the person that they're, what am I trying to say? That they're going against, like the defendant. Say, for instance, I'm the plaintiff, right? And maybe I have a lawsuit that I'm trying to get. If this attorney looks at my case and says, like, okay, your lawsuit is valid, I can get you the money that you're suing for, plus I can, charge the defendant with your attorney fees, right? So I can recoup my money on the back end, then I'll accept your case pro bono. You don't have to pay anything up front. So usually you will find attorneys that will have a set number per year that they will take in that instance. So I was reaching out to people, hoping, praying that that is the way in which I would come about my pro bono representation. But it did not work out like that. Even though it did not work out like that, please understand that God still worked in my favor, okay? Now, going back to those 3 important people, right? The pastor and wife, and the other lady that was helping me out. Now, eventually, throughout all of this, right, time was passing, time was going by, and even the plans of me trying to be the one to serve the papers first or get the paperwork drawn up did not work out. Eventually, this man started like harassing me, blowing up my phone, because we weren't talking during this time either. Harassing me, blowing up my phone, like, come get the papers, da 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 da, this and this and this and this. But I'm still just kind of like, nah, I want to be able to put in writing or get put in legal writing, the ways in which I want this to go, so that there's no problems, no issues, no connections to him anymore once we move forward. But again, it did not work out that way. Now, keep in mind, right, the time frame of this, the end of 2019 going into 2020, right? My divorce was finalized in 2020. Um, but of course, COVID happened in between all of this shut down, me living in my car, to reconnecting with the church, moving into their space, right? we were literally living through the updates of, oh, we're going into quarantine, oh, this and this and this, right? So even though the church was shut down, as with many churches, they were still doing like online services, virtual church, right? So in that, they kept me there, they kept me on the payroll, and I was still doing praise and worship plus a bunch of other things, right? Because we had to fill positions of people that we had to send home because of quarantine. Um, so because of that, right, I told you guys that I was singing, I was doing gigs, working with the band. There wasn't a lot of work in those areas because a lot of people had to cancel events. There was no more weekly this or, weddings and things like that. Everything was shut down. But I ended up getting this DM one day in my Facebook Messenger. And the page of the person, it looked like, they were saying that they were a musician at this church. Now, the name of the church that they were listing, it was a legit church, right? I had went, I looked it up. It was in the area, pretty much of where the other church that I was working and living at was, right? Reached out to me and was like, hey, we need somebody to come do our virtual service at this time on this date. They went into detail. It's going to be a four-piece band. We want you to do 2 or 3 songs. You just send over this. Let us know, if you need background vocals or if you're able to do it by yourself. It's just going to be like a recording. The members of the church won't be there, but we just want you to come, pretty much do these songs on camera, and then we're going to broadcast it. Let us know how much your fee will be, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking back and forth with this person like it's a legitimate gig, right? So the day comes, right, of the day that they requested for me to come to the church. Now, mind you, the pastor and wife and his daughter, they're aware that, this is going on, and where I'm going to. So I drive to the church, I pull up to the parking lot, and it's just a few cars that are there, right? I get ready to get out of my car. And the car that I parked beside, a man got out, walked around the car, walked up to me and was like, are you Terica? And I was like, yeah. And I'm thinking that this is probably the musician that I've been communicating with back and forth, right? Tell me why this man looks at me, hands me a paper and said, you've been served. You've been served. Not only does he hand me the paperwork that says you've been served, and mind you, y'all should pretty much know, the way this story is going, what I've been served with, right? As he gets back in the car on the driver's side, the passenger side window rolls down, and lo and behold, guess who's sitting there? My ex-husband, right? He wasn't my ex at the time because this is the ongoing process, but the man who is responsible for all of this. On this church parking lot, this man yells out of the window, "You've been served, bitch!" And start screaming, laughing, hanging all out of the window. The car bags out, leaves the parking lot, speeds down the road. Now, mind you, at this time, I'm feeling a mix of emotions. I'm pissed. I'm confused. I'm really just like in awe that a person would stoop that low. Like you would literally pretend. And out of all the things that all of the ways that you could have came to try to set me up to do this, to trick me or to pull up on me and serve me paperwork, because it really wasn't that hard. It wasn't that hard to find me. But this was just, again, I want y'all to understand, a person who does not care for you, who is intent upon hurting you, breaking you down, all of these things, right? This was just somebody who wanted to be trifling and evil. So much so that you're willing to play with God. You're willing to play with something that is supposed to be considered holy. We are on church grounds. We're talking about, bringing somebody in to do the work of God. You played with that in order to be able to say that you got a one up or you got me, right? So bringing this all back to the point of, okay, when you want to go, God will provide you a way of escape, right? I sat there for a minute because I really just wanted them to go. I didn't know, if they were going to try to follow me or whatever. So I just let them go and drive down the road. Excuse me. While I'm sitting in the car, I call, the first lady, the pastor, and the daughter, tell them what happened. And they're like, oh my God, come back, get back here as soon as you can, right? Because that could have been so much more dangerous. Like, you can't accept no more gigs, none of that, because now we don't know what's going on, right? Just come back, get here, explain to us what's happening, and then we're gonna look through this paperwork and see what was going on, right? But before I left, let me tell y'all how serious I was about this and how much I really trusted God at this time. Before I left, I went. There was an app called Givelify that a lot of churches were using at the time to where people could send in offering online. Now, again, this is a real church, valid ministry, right? They just had no idea what was going on. They had no idea who I was, none of these things. That this man just used any church, anything in the situation to set me up and to get what he wanted. But these people had nothing to do with anything. But when I tell you I went on Givelify, I found that church. And in that moment, before I left the parking lot, before I did anything else, I sowed a seed. I sent an offering into that church. And I told God, I said, this is a seed, another seed of faith, right? If my walking away, when I told you that I would at first wasn't enough to show you, God, that I'm done with this and I really want better for myself, I'm going to sow a seed again into this moment. I did not retaliate. I did not act a fool. I did not chase them down the street. I didn't do any of those things. I sowed a seed and I told God, I'm believing that even in this painful moment, even in, all of the feelings of feeling like, okay, I'm stuck. I don't know how things are going to get better for me. I don't know what I'm going to do, whatever. I still trust you, God. I still trust you. And I still love myself enough to understand that this is not meant to be my life, for me to be treated this way for the rest of my life, for me to be connected to a person who would even think so little of me to be willing to treat me this way. I sowed a seed into that church. And when I did, after that, I drove off and I went back to my people. So after getting back to my people, again, we go through the paperwork and it was just as foolish as I knew it would be, honey. And so foolish, right, that it infuriated this pastor and wife. Like, I cannot believe that he, first of all, even did this to serve you papers in this way, play with God's name in that way, right? But then all of the things that he was putting in the paperwork about me, just crazy. Him and his attorney both crazy, right? And then shortly after that, right, I ended up telling the other lady that I was speaking to you guys about, who was vital in this situation, about what was going on, because she knew as well that I had been looking for an attorney and trying to get pro bono and all of that. So she kept checking in regularly. Hey, what's the update? Did you get anybody? Whatever. So once I showed her the paperwork, told her the story of everything that was going on, she was like, oh no, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Now, here's where, again, God responded to my faith almost immediately, right? He responded to my determination to believe in him, not just sit in this situation and be like, oh, I'm stuck, God. Oh, I just wanted to get better, but I'm not willing to do anything. I'm not willing to leave this person. Oh, God, I'm just... No, God responded to the fact that I wanted better and that I was believing for him to give me better. So mind y'all, I told you before that I was praying for a pro bono situation, but the way in which I thought it would work out at first, it did not work out that way. But the way in which it did work out, those three people that saw how that man did me, they all looked me in my eye and said, we don't care how much it costs for you to retain a lawyer, how much it's going to cost for you to get this divorce finalized. We are going to pay every dime. Every dime. We're going to help you find the attorney and we're going to pay them. Every dime, whatever it costs, it does not matter. Now, it wasn't but so expensive, because we weren't married that long. We didn't have any assets or anything, any houses, connected under our names. We were living in an apartment that we were renting. So it wasn't much to pretty much fight or tussle over. But whatever the cost was, and I can't remember now how much it was, when I say those people paid it out, I told them, I was like, okay, the couple, the pastor and wife, they were willing to pretty much cover it all. And then the other lady, she was willing to cover it all. But I told them, I was like, hey, I got two different people, that's trying to help me out, so y'all can just go half and half. They said, cool, no worries. Let us know what we need to do. If we need to go get a money order, who we need to make it out to, whatever, right? Did just that. So not only did at the beginning, right, of all of this, when I prayed to God, not only did He give me the sign to let me know it was time to go, when I left, everything just fell in line so strategically to where I didn't have to be living in my car. Things, people came back to me, was talking to me. This worked out, that worked out, that worked out. He also made sure that for me, getting that contract broken or detaching from that person forevermore that I was no longer meant to be connected to was a pro bono, free of charge to me situation. And you want to know why that is? Because I was never meant to stay with that person. Now, if you would have asked me when everything initially happened, could I have even thought or fathomed that this would work out in this way? Absolutely not. I had no idea. Every day was a new step of faith for me to know, how the day would go, how I would get the things that I needed for this day. Like I was solely dependent upon God. If I had never known what faith looked like in my life up until that moment, I knew then, every single day, I knew what it looked like to truly trust God. But saying all this to say again, that even with the roots that were put on me to keep me in that situation, it only took one moment, one choice, one segment of time of trusting God, trusting that inner knowing that, things were supposed to be better for me, right? Or trusting that this was not meant to be my fate to be living and dealing with these things. And that one moment led to this whole domino effect of God freeing me and those roots being lifted off of my life so that I could see clearly now what it was I was supposed to do or who it was that I deserved to be with, right? And so on and so forth, that led into my deep spiritual journey. And okay, check out the rest of the story time, right? So when everything is said and done, don't ever see any person in your life as having more power than God Himself. Okay, I don't care if you're with a person that's swearing that they're going to make your life miserable if you try to leave them, or they're going to expose this about you, or they're going to take this away from you, or anything dealing with the kids. No, when you're dealing with making the decision that God wants you to make, the only thing that can come out of that decision is what is good and what is right, period. Do not give any person the illusion of having more power than the divine in your life by allowing them to keep you stuck. And yes, again, sometimes it may be more of a challenge to make certain decisions because of those roots that are put up on you. But nothing is impossible, my love. Even you walking away and being able to live a life that you cannot see right now will be so much better for you. And when everything is said and done, it comes down to if you really want to, you will. Forget all the excuses. Forget all the reasons why you're trying to convince yourself to stay in this and this and this and this and this. No, if you really want better for yourself, God will have your back. Doesn't matter who has a target on your back, who's trying to do this, who's trying to blackmail you, who's trying to come against you. You will have the freedom that you desire and you deserve if you really want it. So for those of you who are truly feeling stuck, not in a delusional way, like you know that you could do better, but it's just easier to give yourself excuses. No, if you are really, really in some sort of way mentally bound, to this thought process that this person has more control over you, or the threats that they're making against you is something that God cannot spare you from, please, baby, let my story, this video, be a reminder to you that when God has your back, it doesn't matter who has a target on your back. They cannot do anything to you. No matter what they do to try to prevent you from moving forward or doing better for yourself, God will always provide the way of escape. And not only will He do that, He will also provide you with the provisions for healing and uprooting those roots, right, that are keeping you bound, so that you don't walk into another situation, another relationship that is the same storyline with different characters. Okay? So for whoever needs to hear this today, baby, walk away and let God handle the rest. I love you.